They never told you this. But the real moves, they're never announced. The most powerful players in this world, they don't warn. They don't explain. They don't ask for attention. They move in silence, in clarity, in complete detachment from noise. You see, the XRP Rich List is not a trend. It's not a group chat. It's not waiting for a tweet to validate its next step. Because the people inside it, they don't care about being early loudly. They care about being in position quietly. And maybe, just maybe, that's been you all along. No spotlight, no applause, just quiet conviction, patient stacking, and a deep knowing that something's coming, but not for the crowd. So today, we're going deeper, not into charts, not into hype, but into the frequency of silence, the language of those who already know. The XRP Rich List doesn't speak, it moves. And if you feel that, you're already closer than you think. Part 1. Loud money fades. Quiet money lasts. Loud money is everywhere. You hear it in every tweet, see it in every screenshot, watch it in every next 100x video. But loud money never stays. Because the moment you have to announce it, you've already made yourself a target. You've given away leverage. You've handed your piece to public opinion, and that's why the wealthy move differently. Quiet money lasts. It doesn't chase applause. It doesn't need to convince anyone. It just prepares. It positions. It holds. And when the moment comes, it doesn't react. It executes. That's why the XRP Rich List is silent. Because silence is the only real shield left in a world obsessed with being seen. If you've been building in the background while everyone else was yelling for attention, you're not behind. You're becoming untouchable. Because loud money burns out fast, but quiet money builds empires that last lifetimes. Part 2. The rich don't announce moves. The truly wealthy don't post when they buy. They don't tweet when they sell. They don't need you to agree, because they already made their move before the conversation even started. You'll never hear them say, "Just loaded up more XRP," or "I think it's about to break out," because they're not here to predict. They're here to prepare. By the time the crowd sees it, the rich have already finished moving. Their strategy doesn't need validation. Their timing doesn't depend on hype. Their wealth grows in shadows, while the spotlight stays busy chasing noise. This is what most people don't understand. The rich don't announce. They position. They move through back doors. They front-run systems. They enter windows of time that don't reopen once they shut. And by the time you hear the headline, they're gone. You think they're lucky. But they were just quiet. And if you've been building quietly, trusting your gut, and stacking when no one's watching, you're not late. You're learning how the rich really move, and they move in silence. Part 3. XRP Rich List is a silent movement. It's not a Discord group. It's not trending on Twitter. It's not something you can join by asking. Because the XRP Rich List isn't an organization. It's a movement, but not the kind that marches, not the kind that posts memes or argues in comment threads. It moves like roots under soil, like water reshaping stone. Slow, invisible, permanent. It's made up of people you'll never hear from, wallets you'll never track, minds you'll never fully understand. And that's the point. Because the XRP Rich List wasn't designed for spotlight. It was designed for exit velocity, a way out of a system that was never meant to give you control. And those who are inside, they don't wear it like a badge. They don't talk about their bags. They just keep stacking, keep building, keep preparing, in silence. Because they understand something most people don't. The real transfer of wealth never makes a sound. It happens off camera, off chain. in quiet decisions that compound over time. That's what the XRP Rich List is. Not a club, not a title, a silent movement. For those who already know, the loudest shifts in history, you never saw them coming until they were already done. Part 4. Noise is the trap. Silence is the path. You've been trained to crave noise. Headlines, notifications, voices telling you what's next, what's urgent, what's possible. But that's the trap. Because the more noise you chase, the more you lose yourself. You start reacting instead of thinking, following instead of leading. You become easy to influence and hard to awaken. That's exactly how they want it. Because if you're busy watching charts, fighting trolls, and chasing price action, you're not building, you're just burning. But silence? Silence isn't absence. Silence is alignment. When you remove the noise, you start to see clearly. You make moves because they're right, not because they're popular. You stop announcing. You stop defending. You start positioning. And that's when the shift begins. Because silence is how the XRP Rich List moves. And if you want in, you'll have to quiet the world long enough to hear your own signal. Noise is the trap. Silence is the path. Walk it, and you'll start hearing what most people never will. Your own strategy, your own freedom, your own future, built quietly and built to last. Part 5. Watching is not the same as entering. Let's be honest. You can watch every XRP video, follow every analyst, memorize price targets, even repeat all the narratives. But that doesn't mean you're in. Watching is not the same as entering, because the Rich List isn't made of spectators. It's made of movers. The ones who stopped needing signals to justify their intuition. The ones who acted when everyone else was still asking for permission. You can study the pattern, or you can become part of it. And most people? They stay outside the gate because they're waiting for it to look obvious, waiting for the crowd to confirm, waiting for the moment to feel safe. But by the time it feels safe, it's already gone. The XRP Rich List doesn't show up in bold letters. It doesn't throw a parade when you qualify. It's quiet. It's subtle. It's already forming, with or without you. The question is, are you watching the story unfold or writing yourself into it? Because if you've been stacking in silence, thinking differently, and trusting your inner timing, you're not far away. You're already at the door. And now the choice is yours. Stay outside and observe, or step in and own your place on the list.
Part 6. Why the list never explains. You'll notice something about the ones who are truly in. They don't explain. They don't argue in comments. They don't try to convince their friends. They don't need you to understand their moves, because their moves weren't made for you. The XRP Rich List never explains, because it doesn't need validation. It doesn't chase likes or approval. It simply acts. And when the results show up, they don't say, "I told you so." They just keep moving. You see, the people on the Rich List don't waste energy defending their strategy. Why? Because they already did the work. They already made the shift. And now, they're not interested in proving. They're too focused on preparing. When you know where you're going, you don't explain the map to people who were never meant to make the trip. That's the difference. The Rich List doesn't shout to be heard. It simply waits to be seen, after the results speak for themselves. So if you've been quiet lately, if you've stopped trying to convince others and started building for yourself, you're not falling behind. You're growing roots, and roots don't explain. They anchor.
Part 7. Real access doesn't beg for views. You don't see it on the Explore page. It's not trending. It doesn't shout in all caps, because real access doesn't need to be seen. It doesn't beg for clicks. It doesn't chase metrics. It doesn't say, "Look at me, I made it." It just moves. Quietly, powerfully, undeniably. The people inside the Rich List aren't looking for applause. They're looking for alignment. They're not trying to go viral. They're trying to go sovereign. Because here's the truth. Access is not something you promote. It's something you protect. The louder you are, the easier you are to distract. The easier you are to sell to. The easier you are to control. But when you protect your access, you stop giving pieces of it away for likes, retweets, or fleeting validation. And that's why the XRP Rich List is quiet. Because what it's building doesn't require marketing. It requires readiness. So if you've been walking your path with no one watching, no one clapping, good. That means you're doing it right, because real access doesn't need an audience. It just needs you to keep going. Part 8. Quiet XRP Stacks. Become leverage. They laughed at you, ignored you, mocked the asset, mocked the lawsuit, mocked the silence. But you kept stacking anyway. Not to flex, not to prove them wrong, but because deep down, you saw something they didn't. And now, those quiet XRP stacks, they're not just holdings, they're leverage. Because when the world finally turns, when the shift goes mainstream, when the systems flip overnight, you won't be scrambling to buy. You'll already be in position, and while others sell for a quick gain, you'll have options. Options to move, options to hold, options to walk away from systems that never served you. Because that's what leverage is. Freedom with choices. And XRP, in the hands of the silent, the strategic, the patient, becomes more than a token. It becomes a backdoor key to a future where you don't have to trade your life for liquidity. You just decide. Because you didn't wait for the world to catch up. You acted when it felt lonely. You held when it was quiet. And now, the silence is starting to echo. And your stacks, they're no longer invisible. They're becoming the most powerful thing you own. Part 9. You're being prepared, not delayed. Maybe you've asked yourself, why hasn't it happened yet? Why am I still waiting? Why does this feel so slow? But what if this isn't delay? What if it's preparation? Because the people on the XRP Rich List, the real ones, they're not in a hurry. They're not trying to skip steps. They're not begging for breakthrough. They're building resilience. And that takes time. You're not just holding XRP, you're holding vision. And that vision isn't weak, just because it's quiet. You see, the world is built to rush you, to make you feel behind, to sell you shortcuts and panic. But wealth, real, generational wealth, requires space, stillness, silence. So maybe you're not being denied. Maybe the doors haven't opened yet because you're still being sharpened, prepared for access, tested for endurance, conditioned for when the floodgates finally open, so you don't drown in what you've been asking for. Delay is a story the crowd tells, but preparation? That's the secret the rich live by. So keep your posture, hold your line, because if you've been waiting in silence, with conviction, with clarity, you're not behind. You're right on time. Part 10. Time to act silently, not loudly. There comes a point when silence is no longer just protection. It becomes strategy. Because you've listened long enough. You've observed. You've studied. You've watched others speak, shout, argue, panic. And yet here you are. Still. Steady. Stacking in silence. Now it's time. Not time to go public. Not time to explain yourself. Not time to look for praise. Time to act. To move with purpose, not performance. To execute, not to announce. To become someone who doesn't just watch the XRP Rich List form, but helps shape it from the inside. You've heard the signs, you've seen the pattern, you've felt the shift, and you don't need a signal anymore, because you are the signal. So let the world stay loud. Let the noise keep spinning. You You move in silence now, because that's how the wealthy always moved. Not with attention, but with intention. It's time, not to be louder, but to become unmissable, without ever needing to be seen. If this message found you in the silence, if it mirrored something you've been carrying alone, then let's not let it end here. Like this episode, not for the algorithm, but as a quiet signal that you're walking this path with intention. Drop a comment, not to be seen, but to connect with others who are also moving in silence. And if you haven't already, subscribe to XRP Today USA. Because this channel isn't for everyone. It's not built to go viral. It's built for the few, the ones who hear the signal under the noise and are ready to move before the world wakes up. This isn't entertainment. This is preparation. This is strategy. This is for you. And this is just the beginning.